Hello folks, and welcome to the building of this Tony Ray Tiger Moth. In the last video I installed the engine, and the purpose of today's video is to actually look at a little bit of the bling on the model, and that is the working doors for the cockpits, for the passenger and the pilot, and also for the luggage compartment. They're not necessary by any means, and you can build a perfectly good looking model without going to this trouble, but as it is part of the design of the kit, I thought it was important to show you how it can be done, and that's the stage I've got up to. This still hasn't got a catch on it, it'll need a magnet attaching inside. I've deviated slightly from the instructions in doing this, and I'll explain why in the process. But these are working doors which will need a little bit of tweaking once the model's covered. I may even glue them shut, to be quite honest with you, but at least you can see how you can go about to do this. So buckle up, literally, get perhaps your favourite tipple in hand, and sit back and watch how I've achieved this part of the design. This then is probably my first reference to the plans, to be honest with you, because up till now it's all been following photographs on the instruction site. But here we go, I'm going to cut this out, and these are the templates for the aluminium parts, aluminum across the pond, for the hatch for the storage locker, for the landing gear fairings, and also for the doors. A friend was round yesterday and he actually said, did they actually have doors on both sides? And I said, well, actually, in sort of researching the Tiger Moth a little, it was a request from the RAF to aid escape from the aircraft if things went wrong. Obviously very important when you're training pilots. And that's also the reason for the swept wings. In the Gypsy Moth, the wings were parallel, and that made it very difficult and restrictive because you were actually underneath the cabin struts, and by setting the wings back at a rake, you're able to move the CG, and that meant it was easier to get in and out of the cockpit. Anyway, first stage, I'm going to start with this piece. I'm going to cut this out and use it as a template on the aluminium sheet. Let's cut this out now. The sheet itself is described as 0.3 of a mil. These two sheets are supplied in the kit, and all I've done in preparation is give the edges a light sand with a nail file, because in the process of guillotining them up, they have obviously produced a sharp burr. I don't want to cut myself on them, so I'm carefully cutting this out. Now, I may Pritt stick this onto the sheet, or I may just draw around it. We'll see. So that's the template that's going to work for the hatch, and I think it's worth putting on here front, because you don't want to roll it the wrong way. Now, to roll it, I have there my great grandfather's bit of kit. He was a decorator, a painter on the railways, I believe, and that roller, it's like a dense rubber, and I think that'll be the perfect tool for imparting the curve. And the other tip is that you need to be rolling not on a hard surface such as this, but you need the aluminium, or any metal for that matter if you're trying to roll it, to be on a softer surface, and that aids in the process. And what I'm going to do is get a tea towel, fold it over a couple of times, and when I've cut the piece out, I'll roll on the tea towel to get it to give. So we'll see if my theory is correct. I'll get the aluminium cut out using this, and then let's get going. in the end I've just drawn around the template rather than sticking it on. You could stick it on with a Pritt stick and then use water to get it to come back off, but it was fairly easy to draw around it. And it's so thin, it's possible to cut with a pair of scissors. Whether the scissors will be much use for anything else after this is a different matter. But yes, it cuts very easily. There you go. Save that bit. There's two pieces, as I said. Now, need to remember that's the front. So I want it to curl this way, and as I said, I think the trick is to put it onto something that's got a bit of give to it. So I'm going to put it on this tea towel and I'm just going to roll it. I think I might need a bit more give than that for it to work. Let's try a bit more. Yeah, that's starting to go. Of course, if I was still in the engineering club, I would just put this through the roll. That would be a lot easier. But it will go. You're a little bit nervous at first how much pressure to put on, but it is starting to curve. Yeah, that's starting to go. So it's just a case of me being persistent with this. Keep at it, and then come back when I've achieved what I'm looking for. Yeah, we're starting to get the curve. You can see the trick, of course, isn't to do the whole thing back and forwards, it's to concentrate on the part you want to curve, which in this case is the middle. It's starting to go nicely there. Quite a bit to go yet, but I'll keep at it. Bit more. Come back, folks, when it's done. So I've swapped between these two actually. This one's got a bit of give to it, and this is a small rolling pin, honest, that I've used, and that works better, I think. It's got no give in it at all, and I'm quite happy with that now. There's more of a curve on this side than the bigger side, and if I bring the model forward, tilt you slightly, I think that fit is fairly good at the moment. Obviously it'll be worked with hinges and so on, but that's a good starting point. This is the pilot's door done, or flap, and you can see that there's a bent over ridge on it. Now, the way to do this painlessly involves a little tool called a scroker. Now, back in the day, engineers would use them for marking out brass, but they wouldn't have a nice one like this that's purchased from, where was it again? Olifaux, I think, yeah? They would make them out of old hacksaw blades, grind them out. And what it does is it cuts a groove out of the metal. What you do is you mark on the line that you want, and you give it a couple of passes like this, and what it does is it scores a very shallow line in the metal. And now what I'm going to do is put it in a vise clamped between some aluminium angle and simply bend it over sharply. No hammering or anything like that, and I'll get a nice neat bend. Now it then needs to be curved, but it's easy to do because you only really curve in the center part. So I'll put this in the vase and I'll get it bent over. And you can see, I hope, that that's nice and crisp. There's no hammer marks on it. So you simply put it in the vase and then push it over with a steel rule. You get a nice sharp edge. Now to roll it. So the trainee pilot's door's done, or at least one side. Now that I've rolled and shaped the doors, at least for one side, these are the parts which house the magnets that actually keep the doors shut. I did mention when I was talking to Cliff Harvey that I had contemplated actually gluing the doors in place because I couldn't envisage when I would want to open them. But that being said, I have actually seen some photographs of tiger moths flying with the doors open. I'm assuming it's just to get a better view on landing approaches. And that's quite an appealing idea, isn't it? So I will make them working. So if I cut these out, and obviously there is a little hole that takes the magnet. We'll talk about them in a second. I'll just take them from one side. So one fits to the doors and the other one fits to the actual opening. And actually I will cut these out now, so I've got them all ready. There we go. Job's a good one, as they say. Right, there we go. Oh, never cut that tab off. So let's have a look how this fits, or how these fit. Move these out the way. I don't want to put dents in them now that I've spent time cutting them out. Of course, I've left the engine in, which makes this awkward to handle. That's better. Okay. So I'm assuming, I could always look on the instructions, that would make sense, wouldn't it, Mark? So that will go wrong way around. That'll go in there. Might need a little bit of trimming, slightly. And the magnets fit in now. The magnets, they're easy to find in the little box because they are the bits that everything's glued to, attracted to. So easiest way to take it out, I suppose. Now, a word of warning with these. Magnets like this are extremely dangerous if left in the presence of children and or animals. So you should always keep them in a secure place. They look too tempting to put into a little mouth. And if they get into your body, they can cause all kinds of problems. I had a friend who was a little toddler, swallowed a battery and got into all kinds of issues. So obviously the thing to do is to make sure that you don't put them the wrong way around in the intervening part. And the way I do that is I mark the end with a marker, permanent marker, glue them in position, then turn the stack around the other way and then proceed to put them in the corresponding part. So I'll just check the fit in the gaps and then I'll actually start fitting them. D2 fits in the forward cockpit. So I've got it lined up. I have a marker. I'm going to mark the end. That's going to be my upper side. And it's simply a case of sliding a magnet off, putting a little bit of glue into the gap with a little hole. And then pushing it in. There we go. That's one in. Do that all the way along. Keep marking the end. And then we'll do a corresponding one that would go on the door. So I'll take that one off. A drop of glue. Push it in. Push it down. There we go. So that's done, and that can be glued in place here, which I'll do in a second. And the matching one to go with it, it must be D. Not that one, it's got to be the longer one, D1. So D1 would match with that. Just check it goes round. Yeah, you want the holes obviously to line up. Silly if it doesn't. And I'll put the matching magnets into them, but I would turn them round now, and that becomes the right way in. Just double check that. Don't drop the mark. There you go. There you go. That's the way it'll work. So I'll just trim this up so it matches, and I'll complete each of those, and then we look at putting the hinges in place and the reinforcement that's required to do that. You look here, the magnets that are going to go on the door have also been glued to a piece of hardwood, piece of spruce, actually 2 bits of spruce glued together. You can see it's a nice reassuring click. And the next thing is to take the door. Here's the door. And we are going to screw and glue this piece of wood on with the hinges. Well, not screw actually, we're going to use brass panel pin that is supplied, and that will click in like that. So I'm going to glue said piece of wood using a thick C8 to here, drill through, put the hinges in, then mark the hinges on the fuselage, and we put those in as well. So let's get to it. If you notice here, I've marked the back of this wooden block in black, so I know which is the rear, because if you put it on the wrong, if I put it on the wrong way, it's going to reject it. It's not going to want to go on. So that's the rear of the door hinge. If I put the do it centrally like that, I think it'll be okay. So I'll apply some thick C2 to the wood. And I think I'll zap this with some activator just to help things along a little bit. Happening a little bit too much there. There we go. Give it a quick wipe. Now, without the hinge. There we go. That's without the hinge itself. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. When obviously with the hinge, it's going to pull shut. So now I need to find a little drill to drill through the aluminium. And I'm going to use these small screws rather than those pins that are supplied. I just prefer the look of them, and it means I can easily remove and put the door back on. So I'll find a little drill and drill through the aluminium first, and then we'll screw it on. Well, there you go. I'm calling this done. I'll also draw your attention to the access hatch for the luggage compartment, I've deviated from the instructions in that I haven't used the doll's house hinges. When I looked at the prototypes, to me they just looked wrong. There was no riveting visible on any of the prototypes, just the hinge line. So I've achieved that by using some hinges from for control surfaces, and once that's sprayed up, I think it'll look more effective. It'll also need a magnet to keep it shut, or what's more likely with this, I mean, there you can see what I've used. What's more likely with this is it'll never be opened up anyway. So I think once it's all ready and done, that'll be getting glued down. But you will see the fact that it's a fine, thin surface, thin piece of metal that's making up the hatch. So you don't need to go to this extent. You don't need to do this at all. It's quite possible to just use the balsa inlays that are there and paint them, or to cut these out and simply glue them in place, which would be perhaps just as effective. But because this was part of the kit, I felt obliged to have a go. So I hope you've enjoyed this. It's cracking on now. I'll do the other side and then perhaps move on to the cabins, perhaps, and the undercarriage. It looks like the logical thing to do. I hope you've enjoyed the journey. If you have a look at the other videos if you haven't already done so. Please give me a thumbs up. It helps with the algorithms. And subscribe if you haven't done so. It's not just about building. Occasionally I do manage to get flying, but building's a big important part of the hobby for me. Have fun. Let's get creative.